Hey, and welcome to the Magical Learning Podcast. If you are watching this on Spotify, then that is perfect. And if you're not, you can jump over onto Spotify and watch this episode. We talk about changing your approach, and today is the perfect time to start that. You can change your approach and watch the episode on Spotify. Have a magical week. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Magical Learning Podcast. I hope you've had a great week. We want to thank everybody that's been listening. We've had a lot of listens this week, and so we want to thank everybody that's been out there listening to the podcast. It's been great. Hopefully, and I will be testing this out today, but hopefully you will also be able to watch this podcast or listen to it through Spotify. So if you are listening on another platform, I've tested it out. It doesn't work as well, but if you want to test this out, go to Spotify, click on this podcast. And then as you click it, you'll be able to either watch it, or if you want to just stick it in your pocket and listen like a normal podcast, you can do that as well. It's a new feature that we are on the front of. So hopefully you'll get in, have a listen and enjoy that, but you can also watch it. So it's up to you. If there's anything that we reference that might be visual, you can now just snap out your phone and have a look. So that's very exciting. So head on over to Spotify if you want to check that one out. Other than that, today I've got two awesome guests. I've got another dream team. We had a dream team last week. This week we've got another dream team. So I might just jump around the horn and see how everyone's going. I might start with you, Danette. How has your week been?
Yeah, my week's been really good, thanks, Des. It's we've had rain for the first time in at least a month, so that was really nice, and not to the proportions that some of the rest of Australia has been experiencing. And we had International Women's Day this week as well. So that was pretty awesome, just to celebrate all the amazing women in this world. So, and interestingly, we had, we went into town the other day, and as we were coming home, we passed this woman with three horses, sorry. And she was just coming onto our farm. Anyway, she is traveling from Gundagai to Sydney. Her name's Rochelle Gray. And she's basically reenacting Carolyn Chisholm's rides from the 1800s, where she brought women to the furthest ends of the colony, which was around Gundagai Way, and then she came back by herself a couple of years later to make sure that they were okay. So that was pretty cool. So got to meet her as well and her horses. That was fun.
Awesome.
Thanks, Tiz.
No, that's awesome. And yeah, we can, I'll put a link to that if people want to follow that story. So you can just check out the description of the podcast today. Grahame, how are you going? How's your week?
Hey, Jez. I'm great. I'm awesome. Thank you. My week has, like Danette's, been pretty magical so far. International Women's Day so is amazing. We got to, in addition to meeting Rochelle, just driving past. So in addition to saying hi and inviting her in, your mum also, because she's an amazing woman in her own right, then went and picked some apples from our little orchard and took them up. So she now has three new favourite friends in Rochelle's horses. And as Rochelle actually went past earlier this morning, the horses stopped and refused to go any further until they got some more apples. So that was a win. We also got to talk to one of our favourite women, who's a mum who lives in Toronto, yesterday morning, thanks to the marvels of modern technology. So that was brilliant as well. So it's been a good week.
Awesome. And for people that are wondering if we're confused by the day, we're actually recording this one on a Wednesday. So International Women's Day was yesterday. You'll be hearing this on Friday. We're not confused. We know what's going on. It's just a different week this week.
And Jess, how was your week?
My week's been pretty good, actually. I've just been testing out some new features like this podcast video feature. I think, what else have I done this week? Played a little bit of basketball. I got to see one of my friends. We caught up for a beer at a place called Moondog World in Melbourne, which is sort of like a warehouse that's a fun, like beer-based mini theme park, I'd say. Interesting. Yeah, pretty fun. Check it out online if you guys want to have a look. And if you're in Melbourne, definitely go check it out. Great spot. Also... All right. Well, I think it's time to jump into today's episode. And the episode today is on changing your approach. I was just speaking before we started the podcast about why I chose it. And I think this is a good podcast for people that may be new to roles of responsibility, or it can be applicable to life in general. Maybe you've moved somewhere new or something different and you need to change your approach. I was sparked by a podcast on the Freakonomics podcast feed that was about why there's so many bad managers, and it's often because people that are good at one skill get promoted to a manager role, and then they don't have the skills to manage teams. They just understand the framework of the business quite well. So so that's inspired me a little bit, but I also thought it's a great opportunity for us all to sort of learn some different techniques on how we can approach regardless of what the situation is. So I might start with the simple one here, and as simple as it can be. Let's start with you, Grahame. What may be a sign you need to change your approach?
Two things come to mind. One is that you are super comfortable in your entire existence on planet Earth. So there's zero tension, stress, anxiety. Just you are literally in your comfort zone, and you notice that you've been there for a long time. Time to change. The other is almost the exact opposite, where there's an aspect of your life where you have ongoing tension, anxiety, stress. And going back to your example before, Jess, about why do we end up with people in management roles who don't really understand how to manage others? And that's usually the biggest issue is we don't learn how to manage people, including ourselves, by osmosis. So we don't learn it just because we get older. So I think one of the signs of somebody to change their approach can be when, in a work context, if you're working with other people, regardless of whether you're the manager or not, the way that you are approaching your work and working with others, to others, communicating, if that's not working, if it's not getting you the results or the outcomes that you believe you need, then absolutely it's time to change.
And Grahame, I might just re-dip into one of the points you're making there. So say I'm someone whose life is going really well and stuff. Why should I change my approach?
Yeah, it's a great question, Jess, because as soon as I said, if you're really comfortable, there's a couple of sort of qualifiers on that. I think there are a small number, I'd like to think there's a growing number of people on planet Earth who are, and comfortable, I think is probably not the right word. I think they're just more accepting of the experience that they have in this life. So it's not necessarily that everything is peachy and rose-colored glasses and all of that. So they still have ups and downs. They still have moments where they feel anxious or stressed or threatened or upset or whatever it happens to be. But they tend to have more experiences where things are pretty awesome. So it's almost like because they built that skill to be able to accept and not want to control their existence, which is, I think, one of the things that tends to bring us undone. So I think at that level, if you're in that state, then keep doing what you're doing, because you are experiencing stress and risk and you are trying different things. But if they don't work, you don't sort of tend to stress about it. For the rest of us who literally choose to, if I can use a phrase, sorry, I'm just falling over. I'm doing this standing up and I've got one eye and it does affect your balance. I didn't think it did, but it does. No, I have not been drinking, not in the last 5 minutes. For the people listening to this, you'll be thinking, what is wrong with him? And the short answer is a lot.
This is a great time. Sorry, Grahame, I was just going to say, this is a great time to come in and check out the video portion of this. Yeah,
it's not going to get edited out, unfortunately. When we choose to hide, when we choose to play small or to stay small and stay in our little circle of comfort because it's safe, I genuinely believe that we should all, when we become aware of that, maybe connect with somebody else and make a decision just to try something a little different. Even though it's potentially scary and risky and it might not work, that's sort of okay, because part of the reason for us being here is to grow, to evolve. And we can't do that if we never try anything different. Very long answer.
And I think also it reminds me of something that I'm noticing a bit more in Melbourne, and this may be for other people that have been through lockdowns. It's a good time to start trying small new things, because it's now that we have a small break at the moment. It's a good opportunity to kind of get out of the COVID sort of safety slump that everyone's been in, for reasons to protect their mental health or whatever. But now it is actually available to start doing some other things. So yeah, thanks, Grahame.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, that's all right. And Danette, what are some signs you may need to change your approach?
So Grahame, I think, pretty much answered most of them. The one I'd probably add from a work context, if you are going to a new role, is that, particularly if you're now going from just managing yourself to managing others, there are a whole set of different skill sets. So to be able to do that well, unless you're a natural people person, which takes a lot of skills, it's learning what we now call the power skills. So there used to be the soft skills, but actually they're the more complicated skills because every person's different. So I think in that instance, absolutely. The other one comes to what you were sort of both talking about, but if you're stuck or if you're bored, that's pretty good indication that it's probably time to move those boundaries a little bit. But I agree with what you said, Jez, that don't make it a massive big change, do little steps, because otherwise our body and brain, particularly having been through the whole COVID thing, is likely to resist pretty quickly. And the other thing is, if you're not liking the results you're getting, that's a really good indicator that it's probably time to change your approach. Thanks, Jez.
No, that's all great. And I actually might just follow up quickly. If I'm someone who's new to management or something, what might be some key words that exist within the power skills framework, so that maybe they can go Google them, or maybe they can look at the ML podcast feed and see some other episode titles that might be helpful. But what are some key terms that they might look into to become better managers, or people that manage people?
Great question, Jess. I'll add some and then I'll hand over to Grahame because I'm sure he's got some. So a key one for me, which sounds really weird often, is listening. So being able to listen to your people to understand what motivates them, what doesn't. With that comes great questions as well, which is one of the themes I love around our podcast, is there's always questions that we're answering. Things like, obviously, time management is super important. Being able to make decisions is important. But things like, if I want to make a great decision, then how do I hear all the voices of my team, and how do I get that diversity, and particularly how do I make my people feel included in things? So it's those skills around emotional intelligence, for argument's sake, that are super important. And we did a podcast on empathy, which is one of the characteristics of emotional intelligence. So for me, all of the emotional intelligence competencies are really important. And now I'll hand it over to Grahame because I know he'll have some as well.
Thanks. I actually had a list written down and you just named every single one. Fortunately, I'm going to take a different approach. For me, curiosity, I think, is massively important. As long as we can stay curious, and this can be about a team member, a colleague, a situation, an event, an experience. If we can stay curious about it, we stay out of judgment mode, and judgment mode is really not helpful for us because it's like putting mental blinkers on. So if I slip into judgment mode about somebody that I work with, and I believe them to be a certain personality type, for argument's sake, then my brain just focuses on that and ignores everything else. So I think curiosity, massively important. Danette talked about presence, about being able to listen well. And I think one of the other things that came to mind is, what if, particularly as a manager, what if I flipped the language around and started to think about the people that report to me, my team, as the people I work for? Because in organisational, particularly hierarchically, we typically tend to think about, I work for the person above me because I report to them and they have some sort of authority over me. But I think as a manager, if you start to think about the people I work for are actually my team, generally, I believe that fundamentally changes the way you think about what you do and how you do it, why you do it. And there was one other thing that I was going to mention that has since gone bye-bye. So I won't mention it, but I think they're really important.
Yeah, and
sorry, Jez.
Jump in.
I was just going to say, Graham's reminded me a key element of whether it's leadership or management is psychological safety. So which comes with all of those skills. And I think as a manager and a leader, and I love Graham's phrasing because it's about us being humble, It's about us being vulnerable and say, look, I stuffed up, but this is what I learned from that. And so it comes to this whole theme about changing your approach. It's not about I'm awesome at this, I'm the best manager. It's actually about this is what I learned when I didn't do this so well. Let's learn from not only our successes, but actually let's use those, what we'd label failures, as actually a great learning opportunity to change our approach moving forward. So thanks, Jez, and sorry to interrupt.
Can I just jump back in? Sorry, because the thing that I forgot came back again. It's like, woohoo! With great blindness comes great forgetfulness. Think about how the language that you use around the people, again, this is in the context of being a manager or a supervisor or a team leader. Think about the language that you use around the people that you work with, or in the example I used previously, you work for. We tend to do a lot of work with clients who use language like performance management. So it's got nothing to do with a person. It's all about the performance. It's all about what they're achieving or what they're not achieving. And one of the other phrases that drives me nuts, because I'm old and I'm pedantic sometimes about language, is talent management. As a human being, if somebody refers to me as talent, I will be offended. Now, maybe that's not everybody. And absolutely, every single human being on planet Earth has talent, but that's not the sum of them. So I think we need to get back to thinking about, I'm actually working with or working for other human beings, other people, and maybe we should start there. Rant over. Thanks, Jess.
No, that's great. Thank you both. What a great answer. I think that could be our longest full answer ever for a single question, but I actually also think that's great. It's for our first official video podcast, this is the kind of stuff that we are delivering. So I'm glad. Thanks both of you. I might throw this next question to you, Grahame. What are the benefits of being able to enter situations with a variety of approaches?
For me, the obvious ones are things like self-confidence. So knowing that I can go into a situation that might be very new, very different. And again, in the management sense, it could be I've got a new team member, I don't know anything about them, but they seem to be very different to everybody else. So it's having the confidence that I will find a way to make this work. And I think that's quite different to the ego thing where, don't talk to me about boats, I know boats. It's not like I know all of the answers. I may not know the answer, but I believe that I can find a way to make this work, which might also mean changing my approach midway through. So I think confidence is hugely important. And there's also that sort of sense of greater resilience, which comes from going into an unusual or a different sort of situation, trying something that doesn't work. And instead of just throwing your hands up saying, well, I can't do it and walking away, I persist by thinking, okay, well, that didn't work. Let me try something different. And getting to the point where something else does work, because I can look back on that. And this is how we learn and grow as human beings. When we come up, when we face with a new experience, we often look back through our memory bank for previous experiences that are sort of like this to think, well, what did I do in that situation? And if I got through that, then I can get through this.
And that idea, Grahame, of like doing one thing and then if it doesn't work, stepping away and just giving up, or the alternative being just like, how can I approach it differently? This is also, I was reading something recently about how invention has changed, back in the day. And one thing that has changed is people used to, even if they were trying to do something, if they worked out that something else weird happened, sometimes that could then become the invention. Whereas now, if I'm building an app, if something goes wrong, I don't go, oh, let's make an app out of that. I go, okay, let's get rid of this. So I want to start again. And, it's that thing where like a light bulb is technically like a heat emitter that just happens to make light, but we utilize it for the light purpose. And even though its actual function that it best works as is a heat emitter. So anyway, something weird.
It's a very small radiator.
Yeah, exactly. So, awesome. I'll throw this question to you now, Danette. What are some benefits of being able to enter situations with a variety of approaches?
I firstly got to say, I didn't know that about lights. So I just learned something new. That's pretty cool. Thanks, Jess. So for me, the benefits of being able to come in with a variety of approaches means you're more adaptable, you're more flexible to the situation. So if you go in going, it has to happen this way, and then it doesn't, then you don't have a lot of options as to how do you navigate that. Whereas going, okay, well, I think it might go this way, but it could possibly go a whole stack of different ways. And this is where I love things like models and frameworks, because they give us different perspectives to be able to go, okay, oh, if I'm dealing with it that way and it didn't work. For example, the SCARF model, which is about threats in social situations and also rewards. Some people are really high in status, which is the S, some really high in certainty, some are high in autonomy, which is the A, relatedness or fairness. And so when you're dealing with people going, okay, that person, when I said that seemed to be triggered, which one of those model, elements of the model might it be? It allows you to really just adapt to the situation. So I think, one of the things that you just referred to about and it's sort of like the fixed and the growth mindset that Carol Dweck talks about, is even just using the phrase, we haven't quite got this yet, to remind ourselves that those perspectives, it might be with up to 9,999 on the light bulb, but it hasn't quite worked yet, versus quitting and going, well, that didn't work, fail, I'm no good at this.
Yeah, thanks for that. That's excellent. And and I love the SCARF model stuff that you threw in there as well. Hopefully people can take a little piece away from that as well. So thanks for that. Awesome. Well, we can head into our final question now. And I guess this is kind of maybe one of the key things. I know we've touched on it a little bit, but I'll start with you, Danette. How can we learn to change our approach?
So I'm going to start with a quote from Robin Sharma: with better awareness comes better choices. With better choices comes better results. So firstly, you've got to be aware, what's your preference in terms of how you approach different situations, whether it's at home or whether it's with your work, your work. And then going, what other approaches could I learn? So for example, a model that I've learned is around, some people are really big picture thinkers, some are more detailed. Some of those big pictures will be much more on the, what's the word for it? Logical side, and some will be more on the creative side. Same with the detailed. Some will be really logical, some will be really creative. And so thinking, even when I'm communicating with people, where do I think they sit and how do I make sure I communicate using their preference, not my preference? Because otherwise, not so great. Another one that I love is to think about different people who you admire their traits. And I love, and I know they've redone the series, thank goodness, otherwise this reference wouldn't make sense. But yeah, even asking yourself, what would MacGyver do here? Because MacGyver picks up just different things and creates solutions. So it's thinking about, well, what would Mother Teresa do here? What would Nelson Mandela do here? So you could ask yourself a variety of people with different traits that you admire and not admire sometimes. So it's even good to take the devil's advocate and go, okay, well, what would the devil's advocate say in this situation? So if we were all thinking this is the best approach, what's the opposite of that? And why might we need to consider that? Because our brain doesn't like that. Our brain loves that certainty. But by asking those questions about different references, whether it's people, questions, etc., it opens up our brain to new possibilities. And without that, we do get stuck. So they're mine. Thanks, Jess. Great question.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great answer. I've never thought of that, thinking of how other people might approach it that you admire. I love that. That's a great one. Awesome. Thank you. Grahame, I'll throw the same question to you. How can you learn to change your approach?
I think the easy answer is, and I'm just going to riff off Danette here, just watch reruns of MacGyver. I think that's it. On a slightly, possibly more serious note, I'm not sure. I came up with 4 C's because it's Wednesday and I just decided alliteration is easier. The 4 C's, I'm not sure whether 1 and 2 are interchangeable, but the first I came up with was curiosity. I think, again, we need to be curious about something not working. What's going on there? I wonder what's not working right. The second is courage. Because we are talking about changing something we currently do, and often it's changing something that we're very comfortable doing. I had this approach when I deal with other people because it's worked for me in the past, even though the people I'm working with now are completely different. It's a different situation, but that's a comfortable thing. So now I actually have to have the courage to decide that maybe I need to do something different. The third C was connection. One of the hard things for us in deciding to change is that we often think we have to do it all by ourselves. Not true. So who can you connect with? Who can you partner with or buddy up with to help in that new approach? And the other thing around curiosity and connection too is also, what can I learn? So where could I get information that might help me decide or work out what a new approach would be? And the fourth C was commitment. At some point, I just have to decide. I just have to commit. All right, I'm going to give it a go. I'll probably come up with another 3 C's, but they'll be largely meaningless. So they're my 4 C's: curiosity, courage, connection, commitment.
Beautiful.
Great
And
question, Jess. Thank you.
Graham, I'll say to that, congratulations. There we go.
Oh, that was the best I could do. Cool. That was terrible.
No, that was great. I think that's a great little model. 4 C's there. That even could be our little social media clip. Nice and succinct. I like it, Graham. So that's good. Thank you so much for that. And hopefully, again, people, if you're stuck, at least hopefully you can remember the 4 C's. That will be very helpful. I want to get some final thoughts from the both of you on changing your approach. I might start with you, Danette. Just final thoughts on the topic.
Do it. So one of the ways that we expand ourselves is to continuously change our approach. So most people know I'm an accountant by trade. Think about yourself as an asset, because everything you create comes from you. And if you're not changing and learning and growing, you're depreciating at a really fast rate, so that you become obsolete pretty quickly. So by changing your approach, you're learning a whole different set of skills to keep you relevant, which then allows you to be successful, however you define success. There's nothing worse than feeling like you don't contribute in whatever way. It's a great question. Or great allowing me to share that insight.
Well, I mean, I think you also gave a good 5th C, contribute. I actually love that. So there you go. There's another one. I'm just, my ears are picking up C words, but
what's the noun for a collective of C words? There's another one.
Well, yeah, thank you, Danette. Graham, final thoughts on changing your approach.
To quote, just picking up on Danette, how Danette started at answering this question, just do it. So if I can quote Robin Sharma and just talk about 1% wins, any change is not an overnight change. We're not thinking about or talking about needing to change everything literally overnight. It's not possible. It's too hard. It doesn't work. So if we just think about what's one small, like 1% change that I could make, small daily improvements over time lead to massive change. That sometimes makes the just do it a little easier, because I know it's just a small step. And I think I'll probably start and finish there. I think, just commit to doing it, but also reach out to somebody else for support. And one last thought, as human beings, if we're not growing, we are dying. That's a choice.
Awesome. Well, thank you both so much. I think I got a lot more out of this conversation than I was expecting. So I want to thank you both for that. I was not really sure how it was going to go. It was quite vague, as we were talking about before, but you both did a really good job at giving me a lot of info and a lot of different ways to approach this topic. So thank you both so much. We also want to just thank everybody that's been listening. As I said at the start, as I said before, jump on Spotify. The other cool thing about Spotify is that you can actually answer some questions. And if you've got any questions for upcoming episodes, you can actually just plug them straight into the episode. So we would love to hear from you. I think from everyone here, I want to thank you all for being part of the Magical Learning podcast community. And I also want to thank Danette and Graham today for a great podcast. So thank you both so much.
Thanks, Jez. Once again, awesome. Thank you for organising all of this.
Yes.
No problem. And to everybody listening at home, have a magical week.